Welcome everyone to JCTV Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Rick Jey, your host. We're coming to you almost live from the city of Jefferson City, Missouri. That's the capital city, which we'll all enjoy. And we're in that heat of the summer mode, you could say. 102 yesterday on the thermometer, but we're hanging in there just like the rest of the Midwest and throughout the United States. So I want to thank you, first of all, for tuning in and being a fan and watching our presentations on air. Today I'm very honored to invite back a gentleman by the name of Ron Ferkol out of Washington, Missouri. We had a great conversation last time, and today Ron has a lot more to share with you from his art world. So I would like to have you please join me in welcoming, if you will, Mr. Ron Ferkol. Good to have you back, Ron.
Thank you, Rick. Good to be back.
Super, super. Well, you know, I always like to start off by letting the viewers, especially the first-time viewers, get to know Ron Ferkol a little bit. Can you tell us what best describes the world of Ron Ferkol?
Well, as I was raised in rural towns, don't have any formal art training. Painted off and on for since about the age of 13 to about 40. Since 40 to now, I pretty much have painted steady.
Super. Great.
So that spans a long time.
Yeah, that does span a long time.
A lot of paint.
Yes, a lot of paint for sure, I guess. And you have really a beautiful, talented young wife there that keeps you busy, I understand. Would you like to say hi to her or the family?
Hello there. Save some work for me.
I see. Very good. Well, can you share with us basically when or how you was first inspired to become an artist, and actually what inspires you to continue on with your interest in the art world?
Well, I wasn't just inspired to become an artist. It just happens.
I see.
You know, just something always done.
Did you
always
start
enjoyed.
Did you start from doodling, let's say?
Oh yeah, sure.
Started from
drawing my little dog and so on, things like that.
I see. And art in school, grade school, was there an art class?
Yeah, I was. That was the only thing probably that made me kind of popular with the kids, that I could draw.
Yes. Well, I can relate to that too. Like in about third grade, I started doing everything I liked to do before that. I was about 9 years old, and soon my artwork was the one that became up on the board, or they wanted a scene on the board. I did my best to make that happen. So I can relate to that. It gives you some kind of a notoriety and a kind of a niche.
Can get you in trouble too.
Oh, it can. Oh, I guess.
If you draw on the tabletops and that.
Oh yes, yes. Well, I know that work. I can tell whose that is. Nobody draws that well.
Right.
So you had to get smart real quick, didn't you?
I guess that was the first graffiti type.
The first graffiti by Ron Ferkol.
Well, I didn't sign any of it, that's for sure.
Well, you know, I first met you and saw your awesome artwork, which we'll be sharing through your photos that we'll edit into the program as we're interviewing. So you'll agree with me, his artwork is really awesome. You'll see him throughout the different areas in Missouri. I met Ron first at a Jefferson City Art Club exhibition and have grown to really admire his work. And since that, he is at the Astral Glass Gallery. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank him again for being part of the JCTV calling to nature's art that recently came down at the Run Center. So thank you again for being part of that.
Thank you for having me there.
And you were so well represented. We a lot of good comments on your artwork from that.
Oh, good, thanks.
Well, Ron, can you share with me and our viewers your favorite medium?
Well, I have quite a few, but my favorite medium is oil. I also do some work in acrylic, watercolor, and gouache. But I always go back to the oil. I feel most comfortable with it. So.
And they blend so nicely. That's I think everyone knows.
I guess that's not. They do. Yeah, you're right. They do. It's not really my the way I paint for the blending purposes. I'm more or less lay color next to color or value next to value, and soften an edge, but not. Don't spend a lot of time blending.
Well, they're very forgiving, I guess we could say. Also, oils are.
Yeah, and if they aren't, you just scrape them off.
Do you layer, or do you?
Yeah. Sure, a little bit. I usually I usually start out, pretty thin and work up till it gets heavier.
I see. Yes, which gives it more depth and more volume and more form.
I like the different surface textures too that you can get with it.
Great. Well, what is your favorite subject matter? I see all types, but it seemed like you always center in on one subject matter. What can you share with us what that is, and maybe the reason why? Maybe it's inspired by something in that category.
Well, I do still lifes, people, and landscapes, but I always go back to still lifes because they're easier to work out problems, lighting problems, color mixing issues that you might have. But of late I've been actually just painting little self-portraits, small ones like 5x7s, just to work out different lighting and different color arrangements.
As all people who are just now getting into artwork, trying to find their place in the art world as far as just enjoying it, sitting around the house in the wintertime. We're always talking about light and values and multiple values to show form. So that plays a big part in your final presentation. And then if you pick up these key elements in a painting, those play a big part in your finished product. Now you have a studio in Washington, Missouri. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, my studio is just like any other artist studio. There's just stuff scattered all over, paint tubes, paintings that didn't make it stacked against the wall, so on and so forth. A lot of easels, projects that I have started and I'll go back to sometime, maybe not. Right. Just depends.
Now, I understand, have you heard of what they call a three-headed dragon in your city of Washington, Missouri?
No, you might enlighten me on that.
There is a three-headed dragon in a gallery studio. I believe his name is Mr. Lucy. And that's going to be featured in his show, his interview in September. But you're talking about a lot of paint laying around that reminded me of that little story. But he's taken the paint that's always left over from his paintings the last 30-some years, not to give it away, and he started out just dabbing, and now he's got this dragon-looking dabs of paint that have built into a three-headed dragon, and it's quite large.
Yeah, about a year ago I did, I was, maybe it was a little more than a year ago, I was doing that when I clean off my palette, and I would just take small panels and just put them on there, mess around with them. But I called that series Leftovers.
Leftovers, that's interesting. That also reminds me, I remember in that 3rd or 4th grade year in grade school that I did a fish, multicolored fish. I guess I found it in National Geographic. And so I took a candle and I would take these different colored crayons, heat them up a little bit and layer it. And so this is what this three-headed dragon reminded me back to when I built this fish, and it just, I guess it blew people's minds somewhat. But that was as close as I came to a three-headed dragon, but I think for a third or fourth grader, it came out pretty good. I know I got a blue ribbon now for
well, that was good then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, we're talking a lot of art concepts and beginners in the whether you do it for fun or if you do it just for later on when you think you would like to exhibit as an amateur. Do you have any advice where a person could start? I've kind of had sort of enlightened the viewer somewhat. What's your take on that, Ron?
Well, you just keep at it until you get it right. You learn from your mistakes and move on. And if something isn't working right, why scrape it off or throw it aside and start over. Usually, you know, the old saying, beating on a dead horse.
Exactly.
Doesn't usually get you anywhere.
Well, and we don't know until we try.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised what comes out of that.
Yes, exactly. Every trial, sometimes. I had a painting I did a few years ago. We always have a painting that surprises, and that was one that surprised me. I couldn't believe my own artwork at that point. So once in a while we have those surprises in life.
Yeah, there isn't anything better than resurrecting an old painting.
Yes.
And it comes out to be one of your best.
That's for sure. Well, stay with me, Ron, and folks, we'll be back with you. We've got to take a break, so hang with me. We'll be right back.
Look at this guy. What are you gonna do, kid? Go home. It's hopeless. Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to Spotlight on the Arts with my special guest and returning to JCTV, Spotlight on the Arts, Mr. Ron Ferkol. I'm your host, Rick Jey, and I want to thank you once again for tuning in and staying with us throughout the Spotlight on the Arts, Mid-Missouri Art News also. Ron Ferkol is from Washington, Missouri, and who's here today to give us a basic overview of his experience in his art world through a window that you only can see now here on Spotlight on the Arts. Well, Ron, you shared so much before the break. Now I'd like to dig a little bit deeper and ask you to first explain how you arrive at a project and what seems to inspire you in that quest.
Well, usually it's light and shadow patterns on whatever the motif happens to be that really draws me to it. There's so many different interests and things that shadow can do, you know.
I see.
I mean, it takes the form of whatever it's cast on. So you get a little bit of abstract play in it because I paint everything. Most of my stuff is realistically painted.
Yes.
So that's
you begin with the shadow of that object, and you build from that in your psyche.
Well, I see how they relate to the light parts, and
Right.
but usually you can get more interesting patterns out of the shadow light just tends to kind of flood everything.
I've never considered that.
You know,
Now that's
if you like look at the shadow you got here,
oh right.
you know, and you got another one here because you got another light back here,
Right.
and all this is in light. It just
So the shadow is a very important part to.
shadow is a very important part to seeing anything, especially if you're a tonist, which
see.
I'm.
Yes,
I'm basically a tonist rather than a colorist.
Well, from that point, then reaching that conception, basically, can you guide us through your basic steps of a piece? Do you draw out? Do you take pictures of that shadow and that object, and then do a drawing first of all?
Well, I have to I have to decide how much shadow there is going to be versus the light, and I usually do that with thumbnail sketches and studies. Thumbnail sketches usually small. They're not any more than 1.5 inches by 2 inches or something like that. You know,
I see.
and very abstract. But that's going to tell you whether you got a good composition going, and it's going to be mostly low-keyed composition, which is a lot more shadows, or high-keyed, which would be more lights.
Very interesting. So that shadow definitely plays a big part in setting up and building from that.
Yeah, when I do still lifes, I do a lot of manipulating of the light to cast shadows.
I'm going to look for that now in your paintings.
There you
Now
go.
that you're telling me your secret. Now we talk about, and I try to teach what I call graying down. Are you familiar with that? Using the complementary colors.
Sure.
Do you surely know that graying down gives you those different values within that same, shall we say, chemical build of that tone, whether it be reds and greens, using as the opposites.
Right.
So then, that comes within developing that first shadow as you rotate your object with your brush to show form.
Yeah, I very seldom have black on my palette. I
Yes.
always use complements that usually gray them all the way down over to the middle, which would be black, and sometimes that is my black.
Yes. So you can create a black within your complementary colors, like red and green. You will develop a nice brown or a dark red, depending on how much green you mix into your red and what reds you use and what greens you use.
Right.
And so from that, as you develop your object, that seems to please the mind somewhat, or the psyche, to the point that it belongs there, rather than just grabbing a black and painting a black dark shadow. That's the whole difference, really, in a professional, I believe, could say easily, in a professional and someone that doesn't know that technique. So we're giving you a little bit of a technique here, verbally, that might help you in your next painting.
I like to think of everything is shadow or grade starting from the highlight and away from it. And
Yes.
it just keeps gradually getting darker and darker and darker
Yes.
until it gets to the core shadow, which would be the darkest. And then on the other side, it comes from the reflective light, which is dimmer than the natural light. And it does the same thing.
Yes.
Keeps getting darker and darker until it gets back to that core shadow.
Exactly. Now, you're speaking professionally here. You had to learn this someplace. Can you share with us? Is that something you just picked up by looking at the shadow and knowing there's different values, so you build?
I took a few workshops. I've done a lot of reading and made a lot of mistakes.
Okay, I understand.
Mistakes is where you learn.
Well, that leads me to this next question. Again, to inspire our viewers, I think you've somewhat answered the question already. Do you have those words again that might inspire a beginner, or even one who would like to expand their interest in his or her
Well,
art adventure?
just keep at it, and if it's not working, start over.
And watch JCTV, Spotlighting the Arts, because you're going to get a lot of information here. So I thank Ron for sharing some of these personal, I actually call them secrets of the painting world. That's what I was told.
There isn't any
Only the
secrets.
masters know. No.
There's no secrets. Just call me. I'll tell you anything.
Oh, there you go. Just call me.
It might not be right, but I'll tell
I
you.
hear you. Okay. Well, everyone has their favorite pieces of work that they call their favorites. Even sometimes we are surprised, like I spoke of earlier. Can you identify and share with us some of those pieces, your favorites, and why they have become a favorite with you and your viewers?
Excuse me. I guess my favorite series, I usually work in a series until I tire of it, and then I pick out something else. But my favorite was my maintenance series, and basically it was just a lot of still life paintings of medicine bottles.
Oh.
The little orange plastic medicine bottles and the nice brown old ones that you used to get. And everybody seemed to like that, and I just titled it Maintenance, because sooner or later, if we all make it long enough, we're going to have to require some kind of maintenance that comes in those bottles.
Exactly.
And,
I
but the
understand.
light shines through them nice, and they was favorites, always favorites with me, and I think the people kind of liked them too, the ones that weren't afraid of them. Now, with the opioid crisis and all that, people kind of look at that stuff out of the corner of their eye and kind of wonder about it.
Oh, I see. It gives them something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of beauty in glass from the past. You're talking about bottles. You go back to the 30s and the 40s, and there's some beautiful glass work where different things, castor oil, for example, had a great looking bottle. So if you can paint glass and catch all that light and the different values just in a bottle, as you'll see in Ron's work, that's quite an accomplishment. So I commend you on
Thank
that
you.
also.
Thank you.
Well, are you, Ron, showing any place at this time, at any venue where our viewers might view them?
No, not right now. Basically, my work's always at Astro Glass in New Haven, Missouri, down in the Art District, which is down on the river.
Yes.
And I have probably upwards of 30 or 40 pieces there. So I'm pretty well represented there. If you ever get in that area, you can always check that out.
Just coming to the riverfront is quite a visit, and having lunch or an evening dinner, it's quite a shall we say, inspiration. See the flow of the river and what, and then all the art there. And you'll be able to take a look at Mr. Ferkol's artwork there.
Yeah, and they blow glass there, so they demonstrate blowing glass. So it's really interesting. It's a nice little place to go on a weekend.
Yes, it definitely is. A great drive, too. Now, well, Ron, I want to thank you for contributing once again to Spotlight on the Arts. Your second visit has been really inspirational. Would you like to leave us with a website address where they can find out more about Ron Ferkol?
Yeah, my website address is just Ron Ferkol. That's FERKOL.com. If you have any questions or what have you, you can also email me at ronferkol@AOL.com.
Super. Well, once again, I want to thank you on behalf of Spotlight on the Arts, JCTV. Thanks again, Ron, for being here.
Well, thank you, Jerry.
Great. Well, next here on Spotlight on the Arts is artist Dan Woodard of Rolla, Missouri. He will give us an in-depth look at his life as an avid artist, and that show is scheduled coming up for July 18th. Next featured artist on Mid-Missouri Art News is Kathleen Stroop of Jefferson City, Missouri. Kathleen comes to us with many years of experience teaching school, many students also having art shows with students throughout the summer. She'll be our featured artist on the JCTV website also. Kathleen will be filling us in, should we say, more on the programs, doing the 115th year of the Jefferson City Art Club that'll begin coming up in September. Also, Dave Carter asked me If you remember Dave on our last shows coming up, he's from Sikeston, Missouri. He'll be our guest, and he's very well known right now for display Mills of South Missouri. So look for Dave Carter on the show coming up. My thanks goes out to JCTV producer Gloria Enlow and crew, and thank you our viewers for joining us. Look for more Spotlight on the Arts right here at JCTV, and don't forget YouTube. I'm Rick Jey saying, see you next time.